So back in late November 2025, a storm named Ditwah just slammed into Sri Lanka and southern India, and it left behind this incredible trail of devastation. It was a brutal reminder of nature's power for sure. But this was no ordinary storm. So how did it even form? What made it so incredibly deadly? And why does this specific corner of the world seem to be a magnet for these powerful cyclones? Let's get into it and unravel the story of Cyclone Ditwah.
You know, we can measure a storm's power in wind speed, right? Or how much rain it dumps. But there's another element to it, a more human one. Its name. So where in the world did a name like Ditwah even come from?
Well, it turns out the name Ditwah was contributed by Yemen. They're one of 13 countries in a regional naming system. And the name itself is a nod to the absolutely stunning Ditwah Lagoon on Socotra Island, a place of incredible natural beauty. It's a really fascinating system, isn't it? Giving these massive, destructive weather events a surprisingly human and specific touch.
Okay, now let's dive into the meteorology. How exactly does a storm like Ditwah grow from just a whisper of wind into a roaring cyclone?
It all started with what's basically a whisper, a simple, low-pressure area over the really warm waters of the Indian Ocean. But on November 26th, that whisper grew into a murmur as the system ramped up into a depression. And then, wow, within just 24 hours, it became a roar. The winds picked up, it became a deep depression, and then, on November 27th, it crossed that crucial line to become a full-blown cyclonic storm. And that's the moment it got its name, Ditwah.
To really wrap our heads around Ditwah's impact, we kind of need to understand the anatomy of a cyclone itself. Think of it as this powerful spinning engine of destruction.
So right at the heart of the storm, you've got the eye, which is weirdly calm. But don't let that fool you, because surrounding it is the eye wall, and that is the most violent, most destructive part of the whole cyclone. Spiraling out from there are the rain bands, which can cause just massive, widespread flooding. And then you have the storm surge. That's a literal wall of seawater that gets pushed onto the coast, and it's often the deadliest part of any cyclone.
So when this massive, spinning engine of destruction finally made landfall, well, the consequences were catastrophic. Let's take a look at the devastating human cost of Cyclone Ditwah.
We can measure a storm's power in wind speed, but some numbers are just gut-wrenching. And this is one of them. Over 196 people lost their lives.
And for hundreds and hundreds of families, the agony just continues. More than 228 people are still missing.
The reach of this storm was just immense. I mean, in Sri Lanka alone, nearly 1 million people were caught right in its path, their lives completely upended by the flooding and landslides.
This table really breaks down the tragic toll. You can see Sri Lanka just bore the absolute brunt of the storm's fury, with a staggering number of casualties. But southern India also felt its impact, with lives lost and livelihoods just destroyed.
But in the face of such overwhelming destruction, a really remarkable response effort was launched. You saw people from all walks of life coming together to help.
So on the ground, Sri Lanka mobilized over 25,000 personnel in this massive rescue and relief operation. And at the same time, from across the water, help was already on its way. India launched Operation Sagar Bandhu, a really swift and comprehensive aid mission.
The support really came from all corners. You had the tech giant SpaceX providing free Starlink service to get vital communications back up. At the community level, volunteers at places like the Daluga Lathakia Mosque worked tirelessly to cook and hand out food for people who'd lost everything. And in India, smart, proactive measures like canceling flights and getting response teams in place beforehand absolutely helped to save lives.
So we've seen the what and the who of Cyclone Ditwah. But to really understand this whole event, we need to ask why. Why is this specific part of the world so vulnerable to these powerful destructive storms?
Cyclone Ditwah was absolutely devastating, but it wasn't some kind of an anomaly. The Bay of Bengal is a veritable cyclone factory, so what makes this region such a hotspot? Well, it's really a perfect storm of factors. The Bay of Bengal is kind of like a bathtub with the hot water left on. Its high sea surface temperatures provide all the fuel for cyclones. You get this massive influx of fresh water from rivers, which creates a warm layer right on top, just perfect for a storm to form. Then you have the base funnel shape and low wind shear, which act like a supercharger. It's why this spot is the birthplace for nearly 3/4 of all cyclones in the North Indian Ocean.
And that really brings us to the most critical question of all. We know that warm oceans are the fuel for these monster storms. So as our planet continues to heat up, are events like Cyclone Ditwah no longer just tragic anomalies, but a terrifying preview of our new normal? That's a question we all need to be asking.